This is the Daily Tech News for Thursday, June 12th, 2025. We tell you what you need to know, follow up on the context of those stories, and help each other understand.
Today, Jen Briney tells us why a U.S. budget bill aims to ban regulation of AI, and iOS 26 is getting more robust family safety protections.
Okay, I'm Jason Howell.
I'm Huyen now.
And I've got a lot to say about that top story. Let's start with what you need to know with the big story. Apple is indeed introducing a big list of new family safety and parental control features coming to iOS 26 this fall. And so we've got a little bit of a list, and then we can kind of talk about it from there. A smarter, streamlined setup for child accounts. So that means stronger default protections for starters. The system will proactively lead parents into setting up the child account based on the child's birth date, and teens ages 13 through 17 will actually receive default protections like web content filtering and communication safety. Those were previously limited to younger users, so they're broadening it out. I think they're kind of under the magnifying glass right now to kind of improve on teen safety on smartphones. So this is one way to do it. Now, part of the new protections is also a way to share a child's age range privately with apps. That's an effort to protect the privacy of its youngest users, of course. The declared age range API is going to enable apps to request just the basic pertinent info that it needs without revealing too much. Parents will maintain total control over what's actually shared there. The App Store is going to feature more granular age ratings, so 13 and up, 16 and up, 18 and up categories. Developers, of course, are going to need to do some work to indicate if their apps include, tap into either of those age ranges. User-generated content, does the app have that? Messaging capabilities, advertising capabilities, all that stuff needs to be disclosed. And then a few other quickies to mention. Parents will gain a new approval system for contacts that extends to third-party apps. That's nice. And then FaceTime and Photos will gain nudity detection as well, which, I think exists in other aspects. Now, I am not an iOS user, as I'm sure I've said on this show now millions of times. And we are both, we do a show on Android. So our focus is Android. However, I will say when my youngest daughter just got an iPhone, she's been on Android, right? She's now old enough. We allowed her to save up her money, and said, if you got the money, you can buy an iPhone. So I am fresh on setting this thing up for parental controls. And, I definitely have thoughts, but I'm curious to know kind of where your mind is at on this. Maybe even from the developer perspective, like, do these changes complicate things, or what do you think?
Always adding more protections and more security will complicate, developer lives, and it kind of depends on what it is. But I don't think anyone would argue with this, to be perfectly frank. You know what I mean? Like, I applaud also. Kind of like the two parts of this that I see is that, number one, they try to anonymize it as much as they can. So yes, they're always going to want some information on their users, especially for kind of child or kind of kids content, I guess we'll say. So I really do like the idea that, okay, apps will want to understand users' age ranges for marketing metrics and all that kind of stuff. Fair enough. But that they're kind of creating a framework for app developers to respect some level of privacy for the users and not make it too personally identifying. And then I also like the idea. I mean, as someone who was a teenager on the internet, especially the early internet, oh boy, I do appreciate though that they are also making more granular age ratings that just kind of recognize the real experience of young users of apps, which I really, really like. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Because I was wondering, because just broadly speaking, 13 to 17 is a huge age range, and I feel like if I was like that age and I couldn't get a hold of something that I really wanted to, I would have figured out a way to do it. But I mean, I guess by making it a little more granular, maybe folks would be more engaged, play ball. But I mean, it will make it more complicated. But I think also a lot of that depends on the kind of app you have. If you're a content generation management, it's like a CMS style, it'll be a lot more. I mean, I'd be more worried about the back end folks, the people that pipe in information and data to us. Wasn't there like a story some time ago about, unfortunately, some adult or violent content got accidentally flew into like some Instagram feeds or something. I forgot, something like that. But yeah, I mean, from the client perspective, so basically I'm a front, like apps are a front end. So I think things like this make a lot of sense, and shouldn't be too hard, depending on, well, I shouldn't say that, but I think it's just part of the responsibility of being a developer or a creator of apps, is that you have to respect these kind of bounds. I'm excited for you. I mean, like, is there anything else like above this as a parent that you'd like to see, or is there something like that an app has done that really has not necessarily skeeved you out, but like pissed you off or something?
No, I mean, I think from my perspective, what I want more than anything is I want a clear process. As a parent setting up a child's device, I want a clear process. And I think Android and iOS, because I've done this on both sides, they've built a lot of features into these things. And if everything's working the way that they're supposed to, after you set it up, then you can kind of get to a point of comfort. And I think it's a reasonable amount of protection. I've been pretty satisfied on Android, and now I'm setting up iOS. And I think once it's, for my daughter, once I get it to the point to where I know it's intended to work, I'll be happy. The problem is the process. All the changes that they ever make about this to improve the process, you still run into these weird little issues. Like I've got a strange issue right now, and I'm sure someone out there that knows everything about iOS is going to be like, well, actually what you need to do is, and I swear I've tried everything at this point, but like, I'm setting up her phone and she's part of the family group, and I go through the whole process to do this, and that's great. But then when I go to, her front screen, the apps that I hid through the family group settings or whatever it's called, they're still there and I can still lock them. And so then I go into her settings, and like I have to do her settings detached from my settings, and iCloud syncing sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. It's just the whole process. It's like, if everything worked the way it's supposed to, I'd be a lot happier about it. But dang, is it frustrating. I literally spent 3 hours this morning setting up the phone, and it's still not done. And sure, do I, recognize that I might be missing something? Yeah, but it shouldn't be that complicated to start with. It should be pretty easy to be like, I'm a parent, I want this kid to have this stuff and not have this stuff. Do it. And I think it sells itself, or Apple sells it as it's that easy. But I'm telling you, like I'm tech-minded dude, and I just spent, almost 3 hours on this and tried everything, and I'm still scratching my head on certain things. So I just want it to be easier.
No, and it's not isolated to the App Store. I heard a very similar story from a friend who's all on Android, and so he was something about the family accounts got messed up. I think it's really interesting. Like, and I don't really know. I'm not an Apple employee, so I don't have insight into this. But I feel like a lot of times these kind of features, they are designed with a lot of good intention, but it's very abstract, right? Where they kind of think, okay, very like, and a lot of people are very good at this, thinking about very specifically, like, what do we need? What kind of considerations we have? Like, okay, we need like more finer grainer age rangers, and we want to address this. But then, they hand the experience to the engineers, and there's like a lot of back and forth. And we do some testing, but it's impossible to test a real, like,
catch everything.
And I'm not even saying this that sympathetically, but the way that testing and I think experience testing is done tends to be a little bit almost like in a clean room. You know what I mean? And a lot of it could be people like myself who aren't in situations where I can dog food this. In case you're not aware, when you kind of use your own product to test it, it's called dog fooding. And even like someone from myself, like if I could dog food this, but I wouldn't have the same experiences, like even everyday experiences that you have. So I probably will miss something.
Oh,
and
totally.
So, yeah, I think it's just unfortunate. It's just kind of a little bit of how a big company with kind of like trying to do like a broad experience. And I'm not even excusing us. I'm just saying, like, I wish we could do it better. I wish like maybe we could take more time to do like more real testing, because that makes me mad, because that's exactly. And again, I'm not mad at Apple. I'm mad at us as an industry that we could be doing these things better, especially for something so important as child protections. So
yeah, I think that's what gets me, is like, this is a really critical thing. And I applaud all the features and everything. Just make it cohesive and work, and not so dang confusing. It's so easy to run into a speed bump. And what is on the line is my child's safety. Like, I
Yeah.
find it, it's incredibly important. So I want her to have this phone, but I also don't want to give it to her because it's not ready yet,
Well,
and
yeah.
I spent enough time with it this morning. Anyways, we
Hey,
talked about this a lot. We got a whole lot of other stuff to
Yeah,
talk about. If
absolutely.
you all out there have thoughts on this, certainly, email us feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com and let us know what you think.
All right. Well, DTNS is made possible by you, the listener, thanks to Erwin Sturr, Ken Hayes, and Philip Shane. Thank you.
Oh,
so
yeah.
much.
Welcome. Thank you. There's more we need to know today. Let's get to the briefs.
Well, Operation Secure, a major international law enforcement action led by Interpol from January to April this year, targeted InfoStealer malware infrastructure and spanned 26 countries worldwide. That action led to the takedown of more than 20,000 malicious IP addresses and domains, the seizure of 41 servers, and the arrest of 32 suspects. The crackdown also resulted in the confiscation of more than 100 gigabytes of criminal data, with 216,000 victims receiving notifications to take protective measures with their accounts. Malware such as Luma, Rise Pro, and MetaStealer were all disrupted in what is one of the largest coordinated crackdowns against InfoStealers to date.
There you go.
Amazing.
Yeah, good to know that that's happening. But my goodness, that's the thing with where we are in online security right now is these threats just get bigger and bigger, and so many more people kind of engaged with making it happen. So it's literally a game of whack-a-mole that never ends and probably never will.
Yeah, I mean, this sounds amazing and like a lot of work and congratulations to the folks involved, but I can't help but feel like it's unfortunately a drop in the bucket.
It's a drop in the bucket. Yeah, indeed. Meta has filed a lawsuit in Hong Kong against Joy Timeline HK Limited, the developer behind the Crush AI Nudify app that advertised on Instagram and Facebook, even though they weren't supposed to, according to terms of service and all that, to find new users for its non-consensual nude imagery app. Meta alleges that Joy Timeline circumvented the ad review systems by creating a network of more than 170 business accounts and 135 Facebook pages, running tens of thousands of dollars worth of targeted ads. 404 Media had reported back in January that Crush AI received upwards of 90% of its traffic from Instagram ads while, quote, running circles around Meta's moderation efforts. Meta says it is committed to taking the necessary steps, including legal action, as shown here, to crack down on these evolving threats.
Talk about whack-a-mole. My goodness.
Yeah, right? Lots of whack-a-mole today.
Yeah. All right. Well, Yahoo is revamping its mail service with, you guessed it, new AI features aimed at simplifying email management. The features are also designed to appeal to younger users who now make up nearly half of its user base. A gamified catch-up feature uses AI to generate summaries and previews of emails, allowing users to quickly tap to decide which ones to keep and delete. The Yahoo Mail product has seen minimal upgrades in the past decade, but a resurgence in Gen Z and millennial users has encouraged the company to tackle the service with a renewed approach that focuses heavily on AI.
All right, I got two thoughts here. My Yahoo Mail account, which I still have from early 2000s, is just a spam farm at this point, or a spam receptacle. Let's say every once in a while I need to log in there to get some random thing, but I mean I don't like to because it's a mess. Secondly, I think what this story, I'm probably going to get a little pushback on this, but I think it's interesting how they say we're revitalizing it with AI to appeal to younger users, Gen Z, millennial. And the reason I find that interesting is because I'm so used to hearing people say, we're sick of AI, stop shoving it down our throats, we don't want it. But what I wonder is, are companies misguided by thinking that younger users do this, or do they have data that actually shows that younger users are more open and interested in these tools? From the perspective of AI is this rapidly evolving space right now in technology. It's changed, it's impacting everything. And there's a lot of people out there that are, that strongly push back against it, has no value, has low value. Why is it everywhere? But maybe the younger users who are coming up with it are the ones to be like, well, no, it's the now technology. It's cool. And maybe we're just out of date, like out of touch. I don't know. That's what it sparked, this story for me.
I will say though that surprisingly, Yahoo is big and has been big in Japan. So I also wonder what the actual trends are, because I feel like part of me was like, maybe I want to go back to Yahoo Mail with, again, being as a person who's like a little bit less AI in my life. I wonder what the demographics are on this. To be honest, it's fascinating. But yeah, no, I can definitely see the point that you're making, but. I guess we'll see.
It was just a curiosity about that. Like, oh, do they have data? Like, how do they know that?
Yeah,
Why do they think that's the end goal?
Or do they want to just update their image by?
Yeah, well, right, and make a strong, case for the reason why.
Mhm.
With the release of Android 16, Google has omitted the device trees, driver binaries, and detailed kernel source code for Pixel phones from the Android open source project. Those resources made it easier for developers to build and maintain custom ROMs for Pixel hardware. This led to concern in the community that Google might be moving away from AOSP entirely, which would be a really big deal. Google's VP and GM of Android platform, Song Xiao, confirmed that Google is not discontinuing AOSP, that the company remains committed to open source releases, but these changes do mean that ROM developers will now have to reverse engineer changes in order to have be able to build their own device trees for Pixel phones. That makes the process way more complicated. It is of note, though, that most non-Pixel Android phones do not have an official device tree support in AOSP. So in some ways, this brings Pixels in line with the majority of devices that exist.
Well, Mattel has entered a strategic partnership with OpenAI to integrate AI into the design and functionality of some of its toys and products. New AI-driven products are set to release later this year, offering digital assistants based on Mattel characters and enhanced versions of classic toys like the Magic 8 Ball and Uno. Mattel maintains full control over the IP and says it is committed to crafting privacy, safety, and age-appropriate experiences. So
yeah,
I had that reaction reading this too. Just like, okay,
just be careful.
Yes.
Be careful.
Yes,
as
please.
careful as you can be with the AI, because it never gets everything 100% right.
Magic 8 Ball AI. Oh God. Okay. Anyway,
what did the Magic 8 Ball just tell me to do? Oh my goodness.
We're gonna need top protections on your Magic 8 Ball soon.
Mom, could you tell me what this means?
No.
How about a trifecta of AI court and political updates? I know I'm giving you exactly what you're looking for. Okay, first, SAG-AFTRA has ended its nearly 2-year-long strike against video game companies after reaching a tentative deal that addresses AI concerns. The deal includes over 24% wage increases and new rules requiring transparency and consent for using performers' digital likeness. So this has been around, kicking around for the last couple of years. We have at least a little bit of a kind of settling here, and it continues with the next story.
Well, a coalition of Hollywood studios has sued AI image generator Midjourney, claiming it infringes on copyrighted characters by allowing users to create unauthorized images. The studios refer to, quote, AI slop that includes copyrighted characters from Disney, Lucasfilm, 20th Century, Universal Studios, and DreamWorks Animation. This is Hollywood's first major lawsuit against a generative AI company, very surprisingly. That time. Figured
all
it
of them
at some point.
All of them together. Just like,
Yes.
All right, here we go, Midjourney, it's on. And then finally, the UK's data bill passed. This despite opposition from artists like Elton John and Dua Lipa, who were pushing for tech firms to disclose the use of copyrighted material for AI training, something they really don't seem to want to do. The government has officially rejected the amendment. So there you go, Elton John and Dua Lipa. You're going to have to do another collab where you sing out against this, I guess.
All right, and we got a little Nothing to end the day for you. Nothing is launching its next flagship, the Nothing Phone 3, in the US through its site and Amazon. This marks the company's first official push in the US market. The Phone 3 will offer, my gosh, full compatibility with AT&T and T-Mobile. Nothing has shared that this will be its most premium smartphone yet, likely to cost upwards of $1,000. Nothing also plans to sell its first over-the-ear headphones called Headphone 1.
I'm curious about that. I mean, I'm curious about the phone, but I'm also curious about the headphones because, they're doing interesting things all around and over-the-ear headphones. Like, I wonder what price category, kind of entry level, or top tier. It could go either way. And I bet it's going to look kind of cool.
Yeah, I've liked all my earbuds, so I'm curious for the headphone one. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, those are the essentials for today. Let's dive a little deeper.
If you're wondering why a U.S. budget bill wants to ban non-federal regulation of AI, well, who better to tell us what they talked about and what, if any, effect it might have on legislation than Congressional Dish's Jen Briney. So Tom Merritt sat down to chat with her about it.
Jen Briney, thank you so much for talking with us today. I really appreciate it.
I'm always happy to join you.
So you took a look at a committee hearing, or a subcommittee hearing, I guess, at the end of May called Artificial Intelligence Regulation and the Future of U.S. Leadership. Particularly, people have probably heard us talk about on DTNS, wanting to find out information about a provision in the quote-unquote big, beautiful bill that would prohibit state and local governments from implementing new regulation on AI for 10 years. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
So how much fun did you have watching this subcommittee?
Well, I'm a weirdo. I do enjoy these things. This is why people pay me. But this one was really informative because that provision, I mean, first of all, the big, beautiful bill is supposed to be about the budget. That clearly has nothing to do with the budget. So I think it caught a lot of people off guard that it was in there in the first place. And I was shocked to discover that there was a whole conversation that was had in Congress about this idea of this moratorium on the state and local level for AI regulation. And so watching this hearing, I learned a lot about why the people who are pushing for this, and I found out who they were, why they want this. And so essentially what I learned, because they had the Chamber of Commerce present, is that there is a law that was put into place by the European Union, the EU AI Act. And so what the Chamber of Commerce representative said is, quote, "We need to prevent the spread of the EU AI Act from being adopted around the world and across the states," unquote. And they specifically were concerned that states like Colorado, California, Texas, and Virginia had introduced AI regulations that they said were mirroring those that were being proposed by the European Union.
I see. So it's not like we would catch the regulation from the EU so much as oftentimes when states are creating regulation, they might look to something else as a model, and that was the model they were worried about.
Well, we saw this happen with privacy regulations because Congress has completely failed us when it comes to protecting us from big tech and their, data collection and all of that. And so the EU led the way. So that's why if you go onto most websites now, you'll see that you have to give your permission whether or not they'll put cookies on your computer. I don't know. I'm not sure how to phrase that. But that's an EU thing.
Right. It's the cookies thing, and it's GDPR in the EU that gave the basic template for California's data protection laws.
Precisely. And so they are concerned that the same thing is going to happen with AI because once again, Congress is failing us on AI regulations. And so in the absence of a national framework, which is actually what's being asked for, there was another witness in the hearing who I found very sensible. So he is someone who saw it from both perspectives, that we need to be protected from, whatever AI could bring forward in the future. It's already happening now. We're seeing deep fakes and scams and market manipulation, all kinds of stuff. So he sees the need for regulation. But the patchwork of state regulations is difficult for a small business who wants to be in the AI space. And so he's asking for national regulations. The problem is we don't have those now, and there's no signs of Congress actually creating them. And so in the absence of that, the solution seems to be, well, how about just no regulations whatsoever in the United States for 10 years? That's essentially what this moratorium would be.
Now, you've watched Congress for a long time. Is there precedent for that, or is it usually the other way around? Do they usually just supersede state regulations with a federal regulation that is passed? Do they ever just stop the states from doing regulation before they have regulation ready to go?
I don't know off the top of my head that I've ever seen it successfully happen. Have I seen Republicans want to do this?
Okay,
absolutely.
So it's not a new attempt, but it hasn't, as far as you know, it hasn't stuck yet.
Correct. And I think that's why we're seeing this as a dingleberry onto the big, beautiful bill, which was 1,028 pages, as opposed to something that's being proposed on its own, because that's the only way they're going to slip this into law. I
thought it was fascinating that this seemed to take a lot of people by surprise when it showed up in the bill. But you were able to identify that, right there in front of C-SPAN and everyone, there was a discussion of why. You mentioned the witness who had a legitimate, concern of like, I would like the federal regulation. Was there anything in the committee discussion about this that pointed towards what that federal regulation would look like?
No. I mean, what they were talking about is what the states are trying to do, because there has been no federal regulation. They are not working on it. And so I think that's something that people need to understand, is that we're being told national regulation is the solution. Congress isn't doing that. And so they're taking the easy road of just being like, well, how about we just not? So I think that's part of the problem. But what the states are trying to do, they said, one of the witnesses who was looking at the state proposals was saying about half of them are addressing deep fakes, and a significant portion of the other half is addressing scams. I do know that there's some companies that are worried about regulation of market manipulation. So like there's a company called RealPage that has driven up the cost of rent all over the country because they're using AI software to essentially allow apartment communities all over the nation to collude on their pricing. There's concerns about stuff like that. And then there's also transparency laws that was brought up over and over again as something that the Chamber of Commerce people are concerned about, because, transparency laws are, how they're using our data. There's a lot of secrecy about that. How are they building the models? And they want to keep that secret. They talked about being in a AI Cold War with China. And so they really want the secrecy to remain. And they also, or the people that want regulation, they're also concerned about government use of AI specifically for surveillance. So there was a lot of talk about what the states are trying to do, because the state governments are worried about federal surveillance so they're also looking at kind of regulating what the feds are doing. So it's, but that was the discussion. It wasn't, what is this bill that we're creating here in Congress? Like, that was not the discussion at all.
It sounds like there were a lot of people asking for regulation, and the committee said, great, let's prohibit regulation.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Now, this came around the same time as the Deepfakes Act got signed at the end of May. So I'm not sure if that played into the testimony or not. The Take It Down Act is what it's called. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Take It Down Act. That was an actual thing. And that's regulating basically like nudie pics on the internet.
Okay.
So if you have something, like if you go to YouTube and you say like, I have this unauthorized picture of me, like then they have to take it down. It's not regulating AI. But one of the arguments that they're making in these hearings is that stuff like the Take It Down Act that applies to all technology would also apply to AI. So they are kind of arguing that AI regulation isn't necessary. Like this umbrella of laws we already have is going to take care of, like on one hand, they're talking about how innovative and new this technology is. And then they're like, well, it's not that new. Like we don't need any new laws for it. But that's
a classic argument, right? If you don't want regulation, you just say existing laws are fine. We don't need new laws. So I'm not surprised to hear that. Any other surprising moments or things that you heard while listening to this?
I mean, I feel like this was pretty much what I was expecting. I was expecting big business to be the ones that were trying to get rid of the regulations, and small businesses being able to see both sides of it. So the sides didn't surprise me. Nothing surprised me about it. What surprised me was this being included in the Big Beautiful Bill. And I do also want to point out that the Big Beautiful Bill is called budget reconciliation. That's what gets it around the rules that make it impossible to filibuster. But that means that there are rules that say that every single provision has to be related to the budget. When I look at this paragraph in this moratorium, it has nothing to do with the budget. And so we should be watching for the Senate parliamentarian who rules what's allowed and what's not to, because this could get stripped out. That said, we're in a weird time. So if this is something you have emotions about, it's still worth calling Congress, but it might not be allowed to stand anyway. So that's what we're kind of waiting for the future of this at this point, what the Senate parliamentarian says.
Well, Jen, thank you for giving us the rundown on this. I really appreciate it. And as always, thank you for being the kind of person who likes to like dive into this kind of stuff. If folks want an episode about the entire hearing, as well as your ongoing coverage of Congress, where should they go?
So I'm thinking I should have this episode done around June 15th. And so essentially what I do on Congressional Dish for an episode like this is I take all of the fluff out of the hearing and just give you the informational stuff. So all the political speeches are gone, all of that. And so that episode highlighting this hearing should be out about mid-June.
Okay. Keep an eye out for that Congressional Dish in your podcast player of choice. Jen, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You can join in the conversation in our Discord by linking a Patreon account at patreon.com/DTNS.
And we end every episode of DTNS with some shared wisdom. And today, RW is helping us understand.
Got Android 16 on my Pixel 6a, and now they are saying some 6As are having battery problems and may need another update.
Yeah, so this is concerning. I mean, what was the previous phone that did this? Was it the 4A that they ended up ramping down? Like,
Yeah,
you know,
something like
they had the
that.
whole battery snafu just a
Mhm.
couple of months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like Google's having some battery issues, and it's kind of concerning that these things keep propping up, especially when people have a device and then are faced with the fact that it's suddenly, with an update, slashed in half, battery distance that they can get out of it because of these things. I'm happy that Google's taking care of these things so that they don't explode in people's pockets, or at least, tamping down on that. But it's still kind of concerning.
Yeah, and it seems to be some kind of software issue, maybe with the adaptive charging, or it's just kind of ironic. They try to update the software to create better battery life, and then it does the opposite. Or they kind of improve the software, but then it ends up just totally causing crazy things, like a phone that overheated so much it could possibly catch on fire.
Don't want that.
I just say sympathies, but yes. Oh my gosh.
Don't want that. Well,
No.
Thanks for sending that in. What are you thinking about? If you have insight into a story, share it with us. Feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com. Big thanks to RW. Thank you to Jennifer Briney for contributing to today's show. And thank you for being along for the Good Ship Daily Tech News Show. And good news, if you want to keep up on music news, Daily Music Headlines is now available as an Amazon Flash briefing. Go ahead and add it now. We'll see you next time.
The DTNS family of podcasts, helping each other understand.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.